Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Be sure to check out Dragon Shield for all of the best accessories to protect your decks. TCG Player for cards at great prices while supporting local game stores. And Patreon, where you get awesome benefits for your direct support. Hello everyone, and welcome to our newest gameplay series. We will be showcasing legacy games in a best of 3 fashion. This is our first foray into 1v1, so we would love to hear any and all feedback you have. Without further ado, let's kick off tonight's first match. First, we have Zach piloting Reanimator. This deck seeks to put large threats into the graveyard and cheat them into play with cheap reanimation spells. Zach's opening hand contains a Faithless Looting, Entomb, Animate Dead, Dark Ritual, Bloodstained Mire, and 2 Reanimates. Next, we have Mike playing Izzet Delver. This is a tempo deck that applies pressure with cheap aggressive creatures. It also plays Permission with the best disruption and cantrips the format has to offer. Mike's opening hand contains a Dragon's Rage Channeler, Murktide Regent, Force of Will, Volcanic Island, Wasteland, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, and his London Mulligan is a Murktide Regent. Without further ado, let's begin this large, lovely, loud line of legacy. Zach wins the Triangle Dance Challenge and gets to start us off. Zach plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Entomb. He fetches up Grizzlebrand into his graveyard. He casts Animate Dead, targeting his Grizzlebrand. In response, Mike casts Force of Will, exiling Murktide Regent and paying 1 life. Animate Dead is countered, and Zach passes the turn. Mike draws and plays a Wasteland. He cracks his Wasteland, destroying Zach's Badlands. Mike passes. Zach draws, misses his land drop, and passes. Mike draws and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. Mike ends his turn. Zach draws and casts Lotus Petal. He cracks his Lotus Petal and casts Reanimate, targeting Grizzlebrand. In response, Mike returns Volcanic Island to his hand and casts Daze, countering Reanimate. With nothing else, Zach ships the turn to Mike. Mike draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with Ragavan. Zach takes it, Ragavan triggers, Mike creates a treasure, and Mike exiles Unmask from the top of Zach's library. In his second main phase, Mike plays a Volcanic Island for turn. He casts a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Mike gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Bayou. He casts another Reanimate. Mike has no more interaction, and Reanimate resolves. Zach puts Grizzlebrand onto the battlefield and loses 8 life. Zach passes to Mike. Mike draws and casts a Brainstorm. Dragon's Rage Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils Expressive Iteration into the graveyard. Then Mike draws 3 and puts 2 back on top. With nothing else to do, Mike passes the turn. Zach draws and moves to combat. He attacks Mike with Grizzlebrand. Mike takes it, and Zach gains 7. In his second main phase, Zach activates Grizzlebrand, paying 7 life and drawing 7 cards. He casts a Lotus Petal. He casts another Lotus Petal. He cracks his Lotus Petal to cast Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards Chancellor of the Annex and a Snow-Covered Swamp. He casts Unmask for its alternate cost, exiling another Unmask from his hand. In response, Mike casts Lightning Bolt, targeting Zach. Dragon's Rage Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils Expressive Iteration into his graveyard. Lightning Bolt resolves, Zach takes it, and Unmask resolves. Mike reveals his hand, and Zach makes him discard Murktide Regent. Zach cracks his Lotus Petal for a red and casts another Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards Bloodstained Mire and Verdict Catacombs. He plays a Snow-Covered Swamp for turn. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Entomb. He fetches up Children of Corliss into his graveyard. He casts Animate Dead. It resolves, and Zach returns Children of Corliss to the battlefield. He sacrifices Children and gains 10 life. He activates Grizzlebrand, paying 7 life and drawing 7 cards. He does it again, paying 7 more and drawing 7 more. He casts Lotus Petal. He casts Dark Ritual. He casts Animate Dead, returning Children of Corliss back to the battlefield. He sacks Children again, gaining 24 life. He activates Grizzlebrand 2 more times, paying a total of 14 life and drawing 14 cards. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Grizzlebrand. He then follows it up with a Tendrils of Agony, with a storm count high enough to kill Mike and win the game. Before game 2, Mike moves to sideboard, making 3 swaps. He takes out 2 Unholy Heats because they have no worthwhile target and 1 Expressive Iteration. He puts in 2 Surgical Extractions and a Grafdigger's Cage, his silver bullets against graveyard strategies. Zach has no sideboard changes. In this game, Zach's opening hand contains a Chrome Mox, Animate Dead, Unmask, Exhume, Polluted Delta, Entomb, and a Grizzlebrand. Mike's opening hand contains an Expressive Iteration, Grafdigger's Cage, Daze, Delver of Secrets, Surgical Extraction, Flooded Strand, and a Volcanic Island. And Mike gets to start us off. Mike plays a Volcanic Island for turn. He casts a Grafdigger's Cage. Zach realizes he's lost the game already, and Mike passes the turn. Zach draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts a Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards Animate Dead and Exhume. Zach passes. Mike draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts a Dragon's Rage Channeler. He casts a Delver of Secrets. Mike passes. Zach draws and plays a Marsh Flats. He ends his turn. During his upkeep, Mike's Delver triggers. Mike looks at the top card of his library and doesn't reveal it. He draws and casts Expressive Iteration. Dragon's Rage Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils Polluted Delta into his graveyard. Mike looks at the top 3, puts 1 into his hand, 1 on the bottom, and then exiles another Dragon's Rage Channeler. Mike plays a Steam Vents into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Dragon's Rage Channeler from exile. He attacks Zach with Delver and Channeler. Zach takes it, and Mike ends his turn. Zach draws, takes no actions, and passes. During his upkeep, Mike's Delver triggers. He looks at the top card of his library and doesn't reveal it. He draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with everything. Zach takes it, and in his second main phase, Mike casts another Dragon's Rage Channeler. Mike ends his turn. At the end of Mike's turn, Zach contemplates casting a spell to help thin his library, realizes he has no way out, and concedes the game. Before Game 3, Zach moves to sideboard, taking out 1 Faithless Looting and putting in 1 Shenanigans to better deal with Grafdigger's Cage. Mike has no sideboard changes. In this game, Zach's opening hand contains a Shenanigans, Exhume, Lotus Petal, 2 Entombs, Marsh Flats, and a Snow-Covered Swamp. Mike's opening hand contains a Dragon's Rage Channeler, Expressive Iteration, Ponder, Force of Will, Wasteland, Scalding Tarn, and his London Mulligan is a Volcanic Island. And Zach gets to start us off. Zach plays a Snow-Covered Swamp and passes. Mike draws and plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it and pays a life. In response, Zach casts Entomb, looking to avoid Daze. Zach fetches up a Grizzlebrand into his graveyard. Then Mike fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts a Dragon's Rage Channeler and gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Marsh Flats. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards Grizzlebrand and Shenanigans. Not wanting to play into any counter magic, Zach passes the turn. Mike draws and casts Ponder. Dragon's Rage Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils Murktide Regent into his graveyard. He then looks at the top 3, doesn't like what he sees, shuffles, and draws. Mike casts a Mishra's Bauble. Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils a Brainstorm into his graveyard. He cracks Bauble, looking at the top card of Zach's library. He plays a Wasteland for turn. He cracks Wasteland, destroying Zach's Badlands. He attacks Zach with Dragon's Rage Channeler, which now has Delirium, for 3. Zach takes it, and Mike ends his turn. During Zach's upkeep, Mike draws a card off of Mishra's Bauble. He draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He casts a Lotus Petal. He cracks his Polluted Delta, paying 1 life, and fetches up a Snow-Covered Swamp onto the battlefield. He casts Exhume. In response, Mike casts Force of Will, exiling Expressive Iteration and paying 1 life. Dragon's Rage Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils Misty Rainforest into his graveyard. Exhume is countered, and Zach passes the turn. Mike draws and casts Brainstorm. Channeler triggers, and Mike surveils 1, leaving it on top. He then draws 3 and puts 2 back on top. He plays a Scalding Tarn for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts Mishra's Bauble. Channeler triggers, Mike surveils 1 and keeps it on top. He cracks Bauble, looking at the top card of Zach's library. He attacks Zach with the Channeler. Zach takes it, and Mike passes the turn. During Zach's upkeep, Mike draws a card off of Mishra's Bauble. Zach draws and plays a Badlands. He flashes back Faithless Looting from his graveyard. He draws 2 and discards Entomb and Scrubland. Zach ends his turn. Mike draws and casts Ponder. Channeler triggers, Mike surveils, and keeps it on top. He then looks at the top 3, rearranges, and draws. He attacks Zach with Channeler. Zach takes it, and in his second main phase, Mike plays a Wasteland. He cracks Wasteland, destroying Zach's Badlands. He casts another Dragon's Rage Channeler and gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws, takes no actions, and passes the turn. Mike draws and casts Ponder. Both Channelers trigger, Mike surveils twice, putting Delver of Secrets and Volcanic Island into his graveyard. He then looks at the top 3, rearranges, and draws. He attacks Zach with both Channelers. Zach takes it, and Mike passes the turn. Zach draws, sees he has no outs, and concedes the game to Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, what a match! Congrats to Mike on his win. In Game 1, Mike just didn't have enough answers to stop Zack's 3 separate reanimation spells. Once Griselbrand hit, Zack had everything he needed to close out the game. In Game 2, Mike's turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage was enough to seal the deal for him immediately. It just goes to show you how important sideboarding is in a match. The last game didn't have a haymaker to close out the game, but was instead won through Mike's consistent tempo. The threat to counter was enough to put Zack on the back foot, and Mike was able to leverage that and close out the game. Well, that about wraps it up for our first Legacy gameplay video. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Was there something that we could do better? Is there something else you'd like to see? We would love to hear any and all feedback you have in the comments below. Your feedback will help us improve this series over time. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.